So I'll go ahead and introduce our first presenter, Ms. Kjelti Anderson. Kjelti is the board chair and guide for Wild Sky Adventure Learning, a land-based learning organization that uses the land as a classroom for preschoolers year-round in Saskatchewan. During the symposium, she will discuss the forest school philosophy and offer simple ways for parents and caregivers to keep kids away from screens and close to the greatest teacher of all, the land. So Kjelti will be sharing some tools and strategies for keeping your kids occupied, fed, and learning new things during COVID.
Thank you, Evan. Hi, my name is Kjelti Anderson. I am here in my bedroom that looks like I'm in the forest. And I'm just a stone's throw away from where the Battle River meets the North Saskatchewan River on Treaty 6 land in Battleford, Saskatchewan. I'm just so honored to be able to be here and see all these beautiful faces connecting over Zoom with the intent of landing in this new time that we are experiencing with COVID-19 and centering around our children and the next generation. I am not Indigenous. I've been very, very lucky, though, to experience learning in an Indigenous way and taking part in land-based learning camps, cultural camps. And so my perspective is definitely coming from a settler perspective, but I feel very lucky to be able to say that it has been informed through my experiences working closely with Indigenous teachers and elders and knowledge keepers. So I just wanted to say all that with my face on the screen, and I am going to pull up my presentation here. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then we're going to go like this. Oops. All right. So, lessons from forest school. And you can see there's a photograph there, and this photo was taken last week in Saskatoon as part of our forest school preschool. And the tall person there, the big person, is named Andrew. He is our lead forest school facilitator, and he's got his little flock of children there. So this is in Saskatoon, actually in Holiday Park. It looks quite wild though. And I'm going to draw upon our organization Wild Sky Adventure Learning's philosophy, which is the forest school pedagogy and philosophy, to tease out some hopefully tips, or just actually tease out that philosophy for anybody to be able to apply into classrooms, child care centers, daycares, or even at home with your own children. So just to contextualize, this whole conference or symposium is centered around COVID-19 and this unique time that we're living in. And I remember that when the pandemic hit, it's almost like there was part of me that was just waiting for something like this to happen. And I've noticed that it is having some of those paradigm shifting consequences that our culture really needed. So of course it's presented all kinds of challenges to us as parents and educators, but there's really, really unique opportunities that are resulting from the squeeze and the contraction that we're feeling in society. Something wasn't working, right? Lots of things weren't working. And this has actually been an opportunity for us to address those things. I was just reading an article and it said, if you want to know the future, look to the children. And I don't want to go into it, but there's untold levels of stress indicators, attention disorders, depression and anxiety in children. It's when we're looking at the next generation and the generation that's going to actually manage the earth and the planet and the changes that humans and our society has instituted on the land, if our children are not healthy and if our children are not connected to the land, they're not going to be able to handle the changes that are coming. So if we're looking to the future and looking to the children, we need to, as educators and adults and parents, take responsibility for giving them the opportunity to create the experience of the world that they need now to be able to then navigate the challenges of the future. So it's not letting, there we go. Okay, perfect. So I'm the board chair, and I'm also an educator for Wild Sky Adventure Learning on the land under the sky. So that's our tagline. And we are a nonprofit. We're a family-oriented organization. Everybody on the board is a parent. We have a fairly diverse board at this point, working towards the goal of increasing access to land-based programming in Saskatchewan specifically. As you can see on our screen, or on the screen, these are some of the programs that we're offering right now. So we offer a forest school for preschoolers specifically, and that operates 3 mornings a week in Saskatoon. We have urban adventure day camps, and those are like professional development day camps. So when regular school is out, we offer full day camps for full-time parents or for families that want to put their kids in something on a PD day. We have our summer forest kids camp that operates up in the Boreal Forest at Ness Creek. We have a homeschool auxiliary program, and that's new this year as a response to COVID. For families that have chosen to keep their kids out of the school system, we're offering 2-day-a-week or 1-day-a-week camps just for kids to be able to kind of get out of their home learning environment, be in a small group situation outside. There's structured learning, and then there's a lot of unstructured learning taking place. And new this year that I thought it would be valuable to mention here, we are in the early stages of planning a forest school practitioner training in Saskatoon. So there's never been a forest school practitioner training in Saskatchewan, or maybe even in Manitoba either. I'm not sure about that, but for sure not in Saskatchewan. And we're looking forward to be able to host to increase the number of people that are working in the forest school modality. So we're also working on building a network, and I just wanted to state here, because there are so many educators and people that are working in these in this kind of sphere, that we're a growing organization. We're looking for more input. We're looking for more people. So if this is striking something with you, please reach out to me. We'd like to expand our network. And specifically, we'd really like to, it's become a priority of the organization to make sure that we are holding the space or creating more opportunities for Indigenous educators and an Indigenous guided program. So just keep that in mind, and please reach out to me if you would like to get involved. So the forest school philosophy, why am I not, it's not switching. Jumping around, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so the forest school philosophy. Oh, and I'll just say all these photos are recent photos from our camp or from our programming in Saskatoon. So they're all very current to this time. You can see those kids up at the top are staying warm, and there's a little bit of frost and snow on the ground. So the forest school philosophy originated in Scandinavia and has spread around the world. Canada actually has quite extensive forest school network. It's organized through the Nature and Child Alliance, which we're a part of. And it's a whole form of pedagogy, which these are some of the prevailing points. So firstly, that the learning is child and curiosity led. So this is a really big one, and it's often really challenging for teachers to wrap their heads around. So I'm talking specifically about the early years. So that's 0 to 5 years, but it can actually extend up to 6, 7, 8, even 9 and 10 years old. So I'm learning the school system. It's really challenging. And again, it speaks to that future of being guided by the children and us as adults trusting that children know and are intelligent in their own right, that we don't necessarily know what's best for them to be learning or experiencing in a particular setting, on a particular day, or in a particular environment. So we are guided by the child and by their curiosity. This can be challenging because of the school system and because how children and adults alike are used to adult-directed learning. So the child is used to passively taking in information and receiving feedback on their ability to take in that information. And adults are used to, this is kind of generalizing, but adults are used to believing or assuming that they know what is most important for one child or all children to learn at a particular time. So the forest school philosophy centers the curiosity of the child as that which is most important for guiding and leading what is going to be learned on any particular day. Returning to place, familiarity, friends, and framework. So with the forest school philosophy, it's very important to have a classroom in an outside setting, a classroom being just the same as in a school, a familiar place that the children return to. And so whereas the classroom is an unchanging environment, the forest classroom or the outdoor classroom, the children get to learn nuance. They see changes in their classroom on a day-to-day basis between when it's windy, raining, cold, sunny, hot, humid, different animals coming and going, different creatures coming and going, different people, other humans coming and going. So they're in a familiar place that they start to take ownership out of and feel comfortable and connected to, but it's changing in the way that nature is constantly shifting. So the children up in the top photo, they're actually in our outdoor classroom. It's just up from the river in Holiday Park. It's this big, beautiful tree that they can actually kind of go inside, and they've created a swing. They've created some shelters there. So they return there day after day. Nature and the nervous system. So within the forest school philosophy, we believe that children's nervous systems function and actually thrive best when they're in nature, when they're experiencing themselves as part of something greater, as part of nature, not separated and pulled out of nature and set inside of an indoor controlled environment. There's been, a lot of studies done on this, starting with, or maybe not starting with, but there was a book called, I'm forgetting the name of the book, but the book coined the term nature deficit disorder. And it pulled together all kinds of research about what was happening to our children in terms of psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and just in their bodies, in their nervous systems, actually, with the lack of nature. So attention, there's all kinds of ways that we can get kids to come to attention in the classroom. Outside, they actually start to tune their attention to the living world, and that really helps to create focus. Anyone that's worked with children outside has experienced this. Attunement is their nervous system dropping down into a state of ease by that connection to the ground, by that connection to the earth. Play. So this is another real big one, especially with younger kids. It's often hard for adults, educators in the traditional school system to accept that play is learning, that play is actually progressing a child's development, especially in those early years, but all ages. So I remember, my mom would just kick me out the door and say, don't come back until lunchtime. And I didn't have any toys. I didn't have anything to do. It was just go find a way to keep yourself occupied, to tinker, explore, create, daydream, and even possibly get bored. And boredom is something that breeds creativity, that breeds exploration. With screens, with that distractibility, that excitability with children, and having a screen, that they're learning on or that they're playing on, they don't get enough time to just be with themselves and look and create their own opportunities for learning. And that we need to come back to that. It is the basis for creativity and resilience. And in the forest school philosophy, the adults are not necessarily teachers, but rather they're guides, they're observers, they're expanders and extenders. So emergent learning is, again, what is coming out of a particular instance. Finding a dead beaver on the side of the road, like our kids did yesterday. The adult needs to be able to respond to that emergent situation of finding a dead beaver that had gotten hit by a car on the side of the road, because the kids were fascinated by it. If the adult had some agenda of something else they wanted to learn, they would miss the opportunity that's right in front of them for learning from this moment. So the adult is adaptive to the child and curiosity-led opportunities that emerge, and the adult observes and is able to assess what learning is taking place, and is able to assess when it's important to step in and provide a challenge to the learning, to ask leading questions that could provoke further thought or further engagement with the kids, to perhaps jump in with a story or personal experience that might help with relatedness, or to discuss a concept like empathy or grief, which was some of the emergent opportunities that were absorbed by our practitioner yesterday with the beaver, because the children were very curious about his teeth and about his paws and his tail and his fur. And then they were expressing how sad they were that this beaver had gotten hit by a car. And so then they were talking about grief, and they were discussing ways they can honor this beaver. And all of these things are constantly coming up when you're on the land, because it's a constantly changing, generous teacher. And it's just following the lead of the children in the natural environment. So that kind of summarizes the forest school philosophy. I'm not sure if it's going to let me. I have to keep. It was working before. So I see we have a lot of educators and leaders on here. I geared my presentation for parents and caregivers, but also for teachers. So from the forest school philosophy and our way of working, I teased out these 5 kind of methods or things to implement with your kids outside. Rhythm, relationship, ritual, responsive, and resilience. Unfortunately, my presentation software is not working, so I have to keep exiting full screen mode, but here we go. So rhythm, when we're talking about rhythm, I've mentioned this, that it is really important to establish a rhythm. So kids thrive on a certain level of routine. And if, for example, you say every Saturday, we're going to spend 2 hours outside. It doesn't matter if it's raining. It doesn't matter if it's freezing cold. It doesn't matter if it's a blizzard. Every Saturday morning, we're going to spend between breakfast and lunch outside. Then that's the that's where, as a parent, caregiver, teacher, whoever, you have set a boundary that is an expectation, and that really can assist with your own sense of routine as well as the child's. So instead of waiting for perfect weather, instead of saying, oh, it's overcast today, or instead of saying, oh, it's blowing, you just say, okay, we're establishing a rhythm for connecting and going to our land-based place. We're doing this every week. We're doing this for 1 hour every day, whatever it is. So that's finding a rhythm. Then that expectation is just there, and it would be easier to deal with things like, oh, but I want to watch this movie, oh, but I want to play on my phone, oh, but this, but that, but everything. It's like, no, this is just what's happening right now. It's about regularity and returning to the land over and over and over again. That's essential to this being successful in a really deep way. So then rhythm of the season, that's speaking to all the seasons of the year, finding a place to go back to and return to, and following it through the rhythm that the land has in each season and through the seasons. I'm just wondering, I didn't watch the clock. How much time do I have? I want to make sure I stick on my 20 minutes.
You have about 5 minutes, Kjelti.
Perfect. Okay, I should be good. The next one, relationship. So returning to place is really important in the forest school philosophy, and it's your backyard, or it's the small bluff of trees in the park down the street. It's that beautiful ravine that's a 5-minute drive away from your house. It's finding a place that resonates with you and your family, or you and your group of children that you're working with, and returning to it over and over again to have the time to develop a relationship, to start to become familiar with the beings that are there that are other than human, the trees, starting to notice nuance in the landscape and being able to actually read it. That develops relationship between you and the land. Attunement and entrainment, actually feeling at home somewhere that isn't an indoor built-up environment. So I'm just going to take about 1 minute. I'd like everybody to just take a nice deep breath and close your eyes and just find the first place, the first wild, natural place that comes into your mind, that comes into your body when I ask you to go there. Just go to that place. And just feel how much of the sensation you can draw up in your body. Can you feel the temperature? Can you feel the sun? Can you feel the wind? Where are you sitting? What is around you? What are you looking at? What is the feeling in your body? Find that place and just try to conjure up and embody as much of the felt sensation that you would be experiencing there right now, right here where you are. And with your next breath, just really try to expand that out as if you truly are in that place. And then exhale, and you can just open your eyes and draw back to my voice and my presentation. We all have a place like that. Everybody has a wild place inside them that you're attuned to, that you go to when you need to escape from the built-up environment. You can do that at any time, but it's very beautiful and it's very powerful to actually have a place like that close by where you live. It doesn't have to be pristine, wild forest. This is another photograph that's taken in Saskatoon. There are places like this in all of our cities. We're so lucky to have that as Canadians. We all have wild, semi-wild, abandoned, overlooked, overgrown places, even in urban environments. It's in and of itself, exploring places with your little people and figuring out where your place is going to be, that's a beautiful exploration and well worth the time. And then when you find it, you can do things to make it your own, not in terms of ownership, but develop that right relationship with that place. So that brings me to my next slide, which is ritual. Smudging. A beautiful ritual that just drops us in, to the present moment while also expanding beyond time and place. Sit spots are from the forest school philosophy. That's what they're called, sit spots. And it's amazing practice to do with kids and to do it on a regular basis, where you take your children, however many you have, they find their own place with their back up against a tree, sitting on a cool rock, close to water. That's a little more challenging because supervising is important by water. And you leave them alone, and you can give them a leading question, such as, okay, today we're really going to we're going to really listen during our sit spot today. We're going to use our ears, the sensation of hearing the most. Or you just leave it completely open-ended for 2 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 5 minutes, however long. Everyone just sits. And then you can gather the circle together again, if you have many kids, or even just if it's a couple, and you reflect on your experience. That's a ritual. That's something you could do every single time you go out to your place. And that really develops that attunement and awareness. Fire and hearth making, again, that's central to our culture as humans, gathering around a fire. The kids in the photo are making bannock on a little portable fireplace or fire stand, because we're not allowed to have a regular fire pit in Saskatoon, unfortunately, but we make do. The ritual of just preparing food around a fire, that is ancient primal, connecting us to our ancestry. And children love to create hearths. They love to create space, to create nooks of comfort and familiarity. Making offerings to the different beings, to the ants, to the tree people, all of these things, kids love it. Super simple. Gratitude, writing notes, or just sharing what were you grateful about today in our outdoor space. I'm probably running out of time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. I've spoken to this a little bit. I've spoken to this already. Responsive. So this is the role of the adult. You are responsive to the learning and the exploration that is taking place, guided by the children. So you're observing, relating, expanding, extending, and assessing. You're observing what's happening, and you as the adult have the language and the ability to name learning, to name social skills, to name motor skills that are developing. You're relating, you're sharing your own personal experience when it's important. You're asking them to relate to you. You're telling stories. You're connected to them. So the best way is to lead by example, right? Responsive adults will help children be comfortable in wild, natural environments. You're expanding when there's opportunities to expand on a concept that they've come to their own self, expand on an idea. You take that opportunity to expand the thinking, the learning for them. Extending is the same thing. When you pull a little bit more with something that they've started, you pull it out and you continue it, extend it. And then assessing, that's more important for teachers or teachers or leaders to be able to assess, okay, is this work that they're doing, building this boat to put on the water, or building the shelter, is this meeting math outcomes, science outcomes, language arts outcomes, blah, 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 blah. We can do that as adults. That's not for the children to do. So these are responsive ways that the adults are in the wild with the kids. And lastly, resilience. So I know the big question always is, how can we have our kids be safe outside in a Canadian winter? And the forest school philosophy is there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. One of the resources I'm going to link you to is our clothing list for for families signing up for our programming, we kind of break down how to keep kids or how to dress kids properly for winter. Of course, we always need to have a warm-up spot for our winters. We do have indoor spaces that we go in and out of, but they're not fully warm. They're not 20 degrees. They're like 10 degrees or 5 degrees, so that the kids don't feel like they want to fully undress, because then it's really hard to get them dressed up again. Of course, there's extreme weather. There's things we got to do for that, but I'll leave that discussion aside. So resilience, in terms of building up resilience just for our prairie winter, that is the reality of living in Canada. But it's resilience also in terms of nervous system development. The nervous system, everyone is operating in the state of like hyper stimulus right now because of too much screen time, too much activity, too much virtual stuff. So resilience right now actually means having a nervous system that you can actually down regulate and actually have a sense of deeply embodied calm and be able to feel and express your internal state. And that's hard when so much is outside of yourself, so much is virtual. In nature, children are more able to express, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm hearing a lot, I'm feeling sensitive to this. So they attune back and are more competently able to self-regulate their nervous systems, their emotions, their thought patterns. Future-proofing, this kind of comes back to what I was saying at the beginning. We need to future-proof our kids. The future, I don't want to be dystopic, but it's kind of a scary time, right? Everybody is experiencing this collective trauma as we're going through COVID-19, and the other things, the other experiences that we're kind of going through collectively. Our kids need to be future-proofed for climate chaos and dysregulation and all kinds of stuff. In my opinion, future-proofing our kids means making sure they have access to wild places, to natural places on a regular basis, so they can actually feel what it means to be connected as a part of a living as part of the living world. And that also breeds stewardship, which is also critically important at this time. If kids are not connected to nature, they will have no reason to want to protect it. If we don't protect biodiversity, if we don't protect our natural ecosystems and landscapes, it's just going to get way worse. So our kids need to have something to fight for, and the only way they're going to fight for it is if they're connected to it. I have some resources that I'm going to drop into the chat. Basically, frequently asked questions about outdoor play and learning from the Forest School philosophy. It covers a lot of ground. It's a multiple page document PDF you can download. It's awesome. I'm going to send out our clothing list for being outside comfortably. The Child and Nature Alliance Canada, they have podcasts, they have research articles directly and kind of pared down for us, just lay people, to be able to interpret. They have videos, they have so many resources on the Child Nature Alliance. I'm going to connect you there. And then I have I don't have our website. I have Child Nature twice. I'll also put our website, Wild Sky Adventure Learning, into the chat box as well. So I will leave it there, and I am happy to take questions. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go, but in the meantime, I will put those things in the chat. Thank you so much for thank you for listening and being here with me, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you and having some discussion here.
Thanks so much, Kjelti, for that amazing presentation, and I really love your philosophical approach to all this. It's really thought-provoking. I'm Hannah. I'm one of the coordinators for the COVID-19 Indigenous project, and I'll just facilitate a little bit of a discussion here. We only have a few minutes before we want to move on to the next presentation. But there'll also be more time, maybe at the end, to ask some questions for Kjelti. So I would just invite anyone, if you have a question for her, to just indicate that right now by just raising your hand, and I'll call on you, and you can come off of mute and pose your question to her. Questions or comments, I should say, as well. I know that probably there are a lot of you that also have experience and strategies for getting kids out onto the land and into nature. So if you have a question or comment to share, then please do so. And Kjelti is just sharing her presentation in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna focus on questions for now because it's gonna distract me too much. I will put the links that I've said that I will as soon as the discussion is done. Thank you for your. Okay, from Cheryl, thank you for your presentation. Have you noticed a difference in behaviors or emotions with children now during COVID? That's a super awesome question. Let's see. I'm going to talk about personal experience a little bit, and then I'll talk about what I know from Andrew. So Andrew is our on-the-ground forest school practitioner. He's very busy because he's got 2 kids at home and he's busy with our school. So I don't talk to him on a day-to-day basis. But when we were doing the summer camp up at Ness Creek together, I noticed something really interesting when I was doing the orientation, all the families and kids. So I'd had very good attentiveness when I was talking about bear safety and fire safety and muster points and the schedule. And then as soon as I started talking about our COVID precautions and what we were doing to make sure that we were COVID safe for the week, everyone just stopped listening. And I thought that was very interesting. And I could tell that it was probably more the adults than the kids. So maybe this isn't answering your question, but it was like they just didn't want to hear about it. Just don't, you know what? We are here. We've made it up to the forest. We are out of our day-to-day scare, fear lives. Let's just kind of breeze over that, I was like, okay, well, we still need to be careful, but it was very, very interesting. I've definitely, so from Andrew, he's expressed that the kids have expressed more fear than before COVID. But he has said over and over again that the children that he's seeing and I didn't get to this in the presentation, the subscription to our programs almost quadrupled since COVID because there was families left in a lurch, of course, when daycares closed and stuff like that. But it was because of, safety thinking that some parents realized that our small group outdoor land-based education would be the safest option during COVID. And Andrew said over and over again that different from his good friends that are still working in indoor preschools that he connects with, that he's experienced our kids to be still a lot more regulated than the inside oriented spaces. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, Cheryl.
Well, thank you, Kjelti, for your presentation. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Kjelti will also provide her contact information and her email. So we'll try and get back to Kjelti. But at this time, I think we're going to move on with our next presentation. One of the silver linings of COVID is that many teachers and parents are finding creative ways to weave more land-based education into the curriculum. Sherron Burns is here to tell us more. Sherron Burns is a prairie-born settler who acknowledges her place on Treaty 6 territory by being on the land, remembering her ancestors, elders, mentors, and teachers. As an Indigenous learning consultant for Living Sky School Division, She has developed relationships with many people from the surrounding nations and facilitates time in the classroom or on the land through living histories projects and land-based learning. In the time of COVID-19 restrictions, she has moved to online programming and virtual teachings with guests. Sherron is committed to building bridges, advocating for anti-racist education, and working towards reconciliation through collaborative projects in schools and communities. We're very pleased to have you, Sherron, and I thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am deeply humbled to be a part of this presentation, this panel time. And as a part of Living Sky School Division, I just would like a chance to share with you a little bit about who we are and where we've come from so that you understand the changes that we made for this year. So I do have images I'm going to try to share. I will just call that up. And can you see my screen now? If someone could let me know. Can someone let me know they can see my screen? I can't see the chat.
Yeah,
sorry.
it looks good.
Thank you so much. Great. So this first image I wanted to start with is actually on Poundmaker First Nation, and it was taken this summer when we shut down our schools in March. Oh, gee, gotta turn that off, sorry. When we shut down our schools in March, we all had to find ways to meet our students' needs. You know, we couldn't just continue. Oh, why is this going? I can't get this to turn off now. There we go. Sorry, excuse me, I just got distracted by my timer. We couldn't just continue in the classroom in the same old ways, and we knew that things were going to be different in the fall. So we had to find ways to connect with each other and connect to the land and think about ways to be strong this fall. And one of the things the schools were wanting to do was to institute more regular smudging in the classroom or outside. We are a public school division, and but we are a school division that has many neighbors from many First Nations. In our area alone, we have sweetgrass, poundmaker, little pine, red pheasant, mosquito, Moosomin, Soto, Wichikin, Pelican Lake, Atakakoop, and Thunderchild. And those are all nations that are just within a very short radius. So we've been thinking a lot about how we can stay connected and how that can continue to have an impact in our classrooms. This is a treaty land acknowledgement that we use in our school division. I've been trying to help our schools think about ways that they use language really purposefully in the classroom, and being very purposeful with how we think about the treaties, but also, who it actually represents and who benefits. It's really influenced our conversations. We have an elders council that we started, I believe it was 8 years ago now, and you'll see Evan Chamakese sitting in this picture. This was taken about a year ago. And our elders council has been really instrumental in helping us connect to our nations and understanding what our elders are believed to be really important for education for our students. You'll notice in the front there, we have also youth with us, and Evan is not an elder yet, of course, but we've invited Evan and Jess and these young students to come and help us and just provide some other voices. We found that our conversations became deeper. We got to more richer topics when we started to create this intergenerational council. We are at the point now where we've halted our elders council because we can't bring our elders together. Of course, we want to be really careful of their health. We're really thinking about their safety and how vulnerable they are these days. So we're just taking this year to pause and to do some conversations with people virtually and over the phone about how we might continue in the future and just where we're going to go with this. We have a campaign with our Elders Council where we made posters for our schools. We wanted to make sure that students felt they could see and experience their culture and their language within the schools. As I said, we are a public school division, and about 50%, 48% of our students do identify as First Nation or Métis. But we have some schools that are pretty much 100% white kids, and then we have some schools that are pretty much 100% Indigenous, and then, you know, mixes in between. So we really believe that affirming culture and representing the history and the stories and the elders is really important for all of us. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, that this is something that we want to see in our schools. This beautiful elder, Teresa Sapp, she told me that she was in Walmart and a little kid came up to her and said, "Oh, Kokum, it's so nice to see you. You're famous. I saw you in my school." She was just laughing about this poster. We have a program called Living Histories, which supports students' classrooms so that they can bring guests into their schools, whether they be elders or knowledge keepers, traditional people. We just help support that expense of being able to have honorariums and pay for people's travel so that they can come in. And what this has done is really opened up the classroom doors so that our culture, our cultural people with knowledge are coming into the schools, and we're building a relationship. And that relationship is sometimes about the history, sometimes about an art form. It might be just breaking down some barriers, that we live in a community that are very close to one another, and yet we don't interact that often. There's lots of distance, even though we're close geographically. And we're really working on changing that so that people understand and just are able to be enjoy the benefits of one another being together. The picture on the left there is Jenny Spyglass, who's a senator and an elder that's been a big help to me. I've had many teachers and many mentors, and Jenny has been so generous with her teachings and sharing of stories. We're a place here in the Battlefords in Saskatchewan with a lot of events of history. Really significant events have happened in this area, and there's a lot that we need to learn about. And we're learning about it because the history is not always clear, so we need the stories. We need those oral presentations to help us with that. And the elders were really clear to us, so I'm getting to the land-based learning part. The elders were really clear to us that we needed to take our learning to the land. We needed to infuse language. We had to, you know, you can see in this picture, the circle, working together in community, that those kinds of concepts where we could learn about humility and trust and honesty and courage and, you know, being resilient, all of those things would become really clear in our camps. So we were fortunate to have camps for a number of years, 3 or 4 day camps, bringing kids together to experience on the land, putting away their phones, not having access to pop, not having access to screens, going to sleep, listening to the birds in the morning, waking you up early in the tents. And those experiences, you just can't find them any other way except by doing it out on the land. Our elders would come with us and they would enter into the inquiry process that we were doing. In this case here, we have Ethel Stone and Jane Tippewan. They were working with me on learning how to tan some fish skin. We had a fisherman in our group. He would get up early in the morning, was catching so many fish, we decided we should start tanning the skins. And it was just so much fun to work with them. And they were just very interested. So that modeling and side by side, that learning is always happening. This is Daffy Puyak, who's from Sweetgrass First Nation. She's been another mentor to our schools and to myself, helping us so much with understanding the plants and thinking about plants as both food and nourishment for survival, but also as medicine and the things that we can learn from our environment. And I just wanted to acknowledge some of the people that have been big teachers to me in my life. This is another camp where you see students practicing with a bow and drill. They were learning how to carve and make those bows and drills for starting fire, and they actually did start fire that way. It was quite amazing. And there's Kjelti Anderson working with some of our students as well on some plant identification and interacting with plants. These are some from our area. I know that we've got people tuning in from other places, so I don't know if you have these plants in your area, but on the left is kinnikinick, a very special plant here that was used as a traditional tobacco. It's also called bearberry. And then our muskeg tea. Some people call it Labrador tea, but muskeg tea is a staple in our tea. And here again is Jenny Spyglass. She was here at one of our camps, and she was bringing women's teachings and being able to sit with the girls separately. And she's showing them how to make moss bags. And we're looking at a swing, and some of the materials are regalia and beautiful embroidery and beading that's done. Shelter making, Evan Chamakese has been one of our leaders, working with different ways of working in making shelters. This is up at Ness Creek in the Boreal Forest. And the one on the right has Barney Tipwan working on a hide with the principal of one of our schools. She's there with the kids, but also getting right in there and working and getting her hands dirty, which I think is amazing. This student is really excited showing her handmade knife to Jane. This knife was made with all stone tools. We didn't have any files. We didn't use axes. We had some flints, sharp stones that were brought from a stone napper. And Kim Pash here on the right, it was somebody that came in who had a lot of background and knowledge on stone tool technology that he was able to share. And even our elders were quite amazed at being able to work with Kim and learning from him what he was bringing to the table. So we really do learn from one another and sharing knowledge. I'm just going to quickly share a little bit about our philosophical approach and what we're doing in the classroom to support teachers. This was a program we did called Living the Sacred Teachings, and I have a website there which I'll put into the chat. And it was a project we did with grade 6 students at McKittrick. We were looking at a mentor text from David Bouchard on the 7 sacred teachings. And the students were connecting with those teachings and doing artwork, and we were able to make a book with their writing. It's quite beautiful. And from there, we also were able to create a website with some videos and some teacher materials with a blended classroom approach in a Google Classroom. So those are all resources that we're happy to share with you. It also brings me though to sweetgrass teachings. In this area, we realized when we were looking at the book, 7 Sacred Teachings, that we started to realize that the teachings are also called grandfather teachings sometimes. And as I talked to people here on the nations nearby, I spoke with Sylvia Weenie and Quentin Weenie, who talked about sweetgrass teachings as a local perspective on these same work. So we're able to say there's some teachings that we know are common and they will share across different nations, but that we really want to think about who we are locally. What is our knowledge here? And so they created this image for us that we could share with our book that takes the words with Cree words and also a little different explanation for them. So we're really excited about that. In our early years, when we're looking at pre-K to grade 1, we're trying to take an approach that blends things together. It's a play-based approach, exploring, inventing, but we're also integrating First Nations, Métis, and Inuit ways of knowing. And these were some teachings that were shared with our division. And the way that we think about young people being so close to the Creator, and just how we really think about that from an Indigenous perspective when we're working with the young people, and knowing how carefully we need to treat them, how carefully we need to think about them and the place they have in this world. And then we also have this model, which we developed for that project, Living the Sacred Teachings. And it refers back to the model called the Circle of Courage. I'm sure many of you will know about that model. Dr. Martin Brokenleg has presented that model across the world, really. And it's really grounded in Indigenous ways of knowing, but it also meets the needs for all students. So we start in the East, and we think when we're working in our classrooms, we're thinking about belonging first. We're talking about how we feel comfortable with one another, how we feel safe, how we trust. We move into mastery, where we're moving into experiential learning and trying things out and building my confidence as I work. And then I go into independence, where I'm thinking about my voice and the things that I want to say, the things that I want to learn about, some choice in there. And then finally, with generosity, I'm going to share that story out. And that takes courage. But I'm also modeling that reciprocity, that things move in that kind of circle of I take, but I give back. So this has been a really important model that we've put into all of our pedagogy when we're creating our units and lessons for students. So that was kind of a bit of a background about who we are. I'm going to just share some things now about the time of COVID. So this is what Evan asked me to speak about, like, what are we doing differently now? These are some of our restrictions. We're not allowed to have outside guests. So I'm thinking about my elders and knowledge keepers, and those people from living histories no longer can come in the school. In fact, no parents are even allowed in the school. There's no travel, so going to camp is not going to happen. We can't even travel down to the riverbank if it takes a bus. There's no sharing of items. We're not allowed to touch. The one good thing is you can remove your mask if you're distanced from one another. So going outside certainly helps, being able to take the mask off. But it gives us some questions. How will we connect with elders and knowledge keepers? How can we appreciate if we're stuck on the playground? What is that like if we are restricted that way? And then if those restrictions, are they going to interrupt our building of community and how we share the values that we all have? These are all things. Will those students be able to engage in this way? This is lots of concerns that the adults have. Adults get really worried about these things. And I think Kjelti was talking about that as well, the difference between adults and children. I just want to say you can do it, but the students are very resilient and they adapt more easily than adults do. I've seen this over and over again. So communication becomes really important. And by that, I mean, we've had to be very clear with parents about, we need to reassure them that we have a plan and that we clearly explain the plan and that purpose. It has to be flexible and responsive. We have to be able to make adaptations on the fly because the information is changing constantly. We have to think about the fact that parents not being allowed in school. This has created anxiety for parents because for some of them, that connects immediately to a memory about residential school, and that disconnect between school and parents, separating the child from the parent. All of that is there, and we can't deny that that exists. So then we have to come together as a community to make sure we're meeting needs. If students have need for technology, do they have, what do they actually need in their community, in their home, and are we able to still do those things? One of the ways we've done this, as well as we have the tribal agency here that we've been able to meet with and talk with them and make better, stronger connections to the nations that we work with. Some of them are now on lockdown and we're seeing outbreaks. So people are really concerned, and we're trying to work together, talk together to make sure that we're in touch with one another. So I'm going to share a couple of stories of things happening with our schools. This was McKittrick School is here in North Battleford. It's a community school, and we decided to keep going anyways. They started having their smudge, they were taking it outside. And the nice part about that is that as the kids would come off the bus, their parents would drop them off. You can see the street out front. They would be able to see their child come in and be able to have a smudge, have a little moment of connection with one another. Parents are waving them off, and it all felt very comfortable and close. We were making tea in the class outside. We had a fire, permission for a fire, and a cooking bannock. And we were talking about all the plants that are in our neighborhood, in our area. thinking about what you have close by. What is it you're able to access? What can you learn from that's near you? This one plant here that I brought in, the buffalo berry, a lot of the kids had seen it before, but they didn't know what it was. They didn't know what it tasted like. They didn't know if it was safe. So being able to bring some of those things in and experience them on the playground was great for them. They actually have a tree right outside their door of their school that nobody actually knew what it was. This is in Looseland, and Looseland is a farming community. These are probably all white kids, but they're working in their playground, building shelters, building snares, cleaning fish. You can see they're wearing masks, so because they're very close together. But if they are far apart, they can take their masks off and working in a cohort. And this program is called Conversations with Nature. Is another small school called Medstead. And we have here Daffy Puyak and Oriole Dancer and Bonnie McNabb, who are all artists and storytellers that are working together with the students virtually and live. So we were able to make some videos of them in their studios and in the outdoors. And then they also were doing live Zoom with the kids to be able to get them doing things outside. This forest area that you see around the artists here where the trees are, there's actually forts all through there. It's kind of an amazing place, and it's generational. Kids have been going back and making forts in those trees next to the playground for many, many years. Nobody even knows how long. So these artists are able to go and work in their forest space and then leave things for them, and then the kids come and find them and discover them. They've been quite excited to have this back and forth way. And we're calling it a conversation with nature. So they're really thinking about, what does that mean? How do you have a conversation with nature? That means I'm thinking about Mother Earth as something that is alive, as a being, as something with a spirit. And if I begin to think about things as having spirit, I start to connect to my space a little differently. I think that in this time of COVID, we're always asking the Creator for the gifts of love and kindness and understanding. And with that, we start to recognize that there can be a gift in each day with what we're provided, with the thing that's before us. And one of the things I think that COVID has brought to us is this time to be outside and to renew my relationship to the land, and sometimes to see things with new eyes. So even though I'm stuck on the playground, I can start to look at my playground as a different space than I saw it before. I start to wake up to the things that are around me. I start to look more carefully. I start to listen more carefully and appreciate all that's there. And lastly, I'd like to just mention this program, which is called Stories from the Land. And it was something that I began talking with some of the people I work with, the resource people I work with, and asked them how we could put things onto video, because we knew we were not going to be able to bring guests into the classrooms. So last April, I began talking with all of these people that are listed here and asking them about what we could film and how we could film it. And then we made our plans and created films with each of them on these topics. There is a website here that has just been getting made, and I'm going to put that into the chat after as well, so you have it. Well, you're welcome to take a look at it and use it. We welcome you sharing our resources. So we called it Stories from the Land, and we have these conversations. There's Evan's video with shelter building. We have hand games, thinking about water and talking about water as something that we need to protect. And then there's a creation story about Neanimus that we hear from Barry Hennique. It's a very old story, and we felt quite privileged to be able to capture it on film. We're hoping that students will start to think about other ways they can collect stories from the land. What is that story and how they want to share it? So to end with this thought about a community action project, what students might do as they think about how to engage with community, even from a distance and from, with these restrictions in mind, this time of COVID, what could we do to interact with our community? to engage with them, or maybe even inform them. It depends on what the project is, how you want, what the purpose will be. And then who is your community? Who is your audience? What are you going to do? What will you do? How will you get involved with other people or bring people in? So some of the things we've been brainstorming about is that you might want to do an activity where you decorated the fences of the playground, putting up messages or possibly invitations for people to do something to the fence as well, so that it's a back and forth on that fence. Maybe they would create a giving tree on the playground, a place where they can leave things for people to take, and then other people can leave things for someone else to take, a back and forth exchange, that reciprocity. Perhaps they invite storytellers to come in, and we make story boxes that could represent that story, either in a 3-dimensional form or a 2-dimensional form, illustrating those stories. Perhaps we create an outdoor gallery on the playground where we leave things for people to look at and to come through. Perhaps we create prayer flags, messages for the community. We invite people to add their own flags with their own prayers and messages for that community. Or another one might be to actually plant a garden in a playground. What would a playground garden look like? How would we research some of those good earth practices? And maybe we invite community to kind of add to the design, add their ideas, so that we consider the shape of it, we consider symbols, the meaning of those symbols, what to plant and why, how to prepare the ground, maybe planting indoors to begin with, and observing, drawing, nurturing, recording, measuring, documenting. There's so many things that could be done still in this time if we don't think of it as a time of restrictions, but a time with the gifts of its own. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Merci Cho, Nakumi, and I am open to questions. Thank you so much.
If anybody has any questions for Sherron, we'll take a few minutes, and just feel free to unmute your microphone and share your video.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm very, very fascinated by the fish skin tanning that you had mentioned. What is that process like, and what do you use it for when you're done?
Okay. Well, I have to say my knowledge is quite small, but I was working with, we had a specialist there that was giving us advice on how to do an inquiry. So we had all these skins. I was going to do some printmaking with them, and I thought, let's try something else, more like how to make these skins useful. So he had suggested I had to scrape the fat off of it and then soak it in water with some fat in the water, some oil in the water, and also some soap. And that was left overnight. And then I would take it out, scrape some more, put it back in the water, take it out, scrape it some more. So the elders were helping me figure out, did we want to take the scales off or leave the scales on? Different things like that we played with. As it dried, we would have to kind of work it. And I turned it into an artwork, actually. It doesn't have any odor. It's beautiful. It's strong. You can pull on it. And I would like to really experiment some more with it. I have recently been watching, I follow Christy Belcourt, and I don't know if you follow Christy on Facebook at all, but she's been posting some things with tea tanning. So I think there's a whole bunch I need to learn around it still, where they were soaking the fish skin in tea water and over like a process of about a week or something like that. And the skin takes on the color of the tea. It's quite beautiful. So I certainly need to learn more, and I know that there's more out there.
Thank you. Miigwech.
So with that, I think we have our next presenter waiting. I know, all this talk about COVID, it's a very scary and isolating time for many people. When we were planning this event, one of the big things we heard was that we should talk about mental health. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Brandy Albert from the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center. She's going to share some information and resources on how teachers, students, parents can take care of their mental health and keep themselves healthy and safe during the pandemic. Brandy is from Norway House Cree Nation, but currently resides in Thompson, Manitoba. She works at the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center as a student support facilitator with a team of 9 who support students and staff in First Nation school with their social, emotional, and mental well-being. Brandy has been practicing social work in different capacities in northern Manitoba for the last 15 years. Her family, community, and love for who she is as an Indigenous woman motivates her to continue the work and fulfill her passion of creating positive differences for our children, youth, and communities. So with that, I'd like to welcome Brandy, if you can come onto screen and unmute.
Well, thank you, Evan, for that nice introduction. I just want to acknowledge and thank the elder for the prayer that he opened with our session today with. I want to acknowledge Treaty 5 territory that I am in right now, in the traditional territory of Nishnaway, Cree Nation, and the homelands of the Métis people. I am very humbled to be a part of this symposium today. And I want to talk to you about mental health and COVID because, you know, it is having an impact on people today. So I will share my screen and start my timer so that we're on time. So, you know, back in March, COVID was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization, sorry. And I don't know if you recall, but in February, when Kobe Bryant passed away, I remember seeing a newspaper clip, and it had on the front page, it had Kobe and his daughter, and the announcing their passing. And then in the corner beside that clip, there was just a small paragraph of China and how this pandemic arose. And, you know, it was just after that, a month later, it's worldwide, you know, it's a pandemic, everyone's told to stay home, schools were closed, travel was restricted, you know, and this caused a lot of anxiety and fear, worry, and within people all over the world. And then over time, you know, like we have lost people we've loved and cared for. So, you know, that compounded that stress within ourselves, alongside with, you know, the changes in routine and consistency and predictability with our jobs, our school, and everything around us. And then, you know, as things escalated and numbers are rising and we're seeing this second wave, we have more measures in place to keep us safe. We have people isolating, they have to self-quarantine, and, you know, that also takes a toll on their mental well-being. And I just want to mention too, like, as Indigenous people with the history of colonization and assimilation, you know, that has left a lot of trauma within our people, and our young people are living with that intergenerational trauma. So I just want to make you aware that with COVID and this world that we're living in, you know, some people might be susceptible to getting re-traumatized because of this. You know, there might be re-traumatized at a rate of 2 to 7 times more likely to deal with all this again. So, you know, I just want to make you guys aware, and that this might be impacting people much more than they let on, and that they're showing you or telling you about. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So our mental well-being, you know, it consists of our thoughts, our knowledge, our attitude, and our beliefs. It is everything that we grew up with, that we were taught, that our culture, our traditions influences our mental well-being. So we have to keep in check that we have those positive thoughts, that we have those positive feelings and those attitudes, and that positive self-image, and be aware, like, we have to keep working on it, and it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to take routine and consistency to make sure we are okay. So I'll go through a little bit more of that later on in the slides here. So right now, as Canadians, we have a lot of mental health issues in our country. As 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health problem over the course of the year. And that statistic probably has changed now with COVID. And we know that 1 in 3 people will have a mental illness over their lifetime. And especially for youth, we have 1 in 5 youth will only seek the mental health supports that they need as a young person. And we know that mental illnesses are caused by our environment, our genetics, and our biology. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like the intergenerational trauma that we see today through the effects of Indian residential schools and other traumatic events that have happened, like the 60s scoop and such. So I just wanted to share this quote here. COVID-19 is the ultimate disruptor, reshaping people's work lives, family dynamics, and finances. No one knows how long it will last. No one knows who's contagious. And confronting all of these issues at once can cause emotional and psychological stress, affecting ourselves and our relationships. So, you know, some people are resilient and they can get through this pandemic without a whole lot of trouble. But some people, you know, are impacted already with mental health issues or illnesses. And, you know, that could cause additional stress and anxiety and depression. But we must recognize that we have our strengths, but we also have to acknowledge our weaknesses that we would have to work on to get through this tough time in our lives. I just want to share a little bit of the stress response that we have as human beings. So anything that causes stress in your life, whether it be home, work, school, COVID-19, you know, the first stage of our stress response is the adrenaline being released into our body, where our heart is beating quicker, or our breathing might be faster, and this could cause a both good and bad response. It could drive you, it could motivate you to do better, like in your second stage, or you can endure so much where it causes anxiety, memory loss. You're more susceptible to getting a cold or the flu. But in stage 3, it says if you're continually in this stress mode, you know, if you're not resolving or addressing those issues in your life that are causing you stress, you're going to drain your system. You're going to deplete that in your body. So that's going to cause you to make errors in judgment. Maybe you're going to have sleepless nights. Maybe your mood's going to change, or you're going to develop other sicknesses in response to this. As Dr. Perry, he's a teacher, he's a clinician, he's a psychiatrist, he's the founder of Child Trauma Academy in Houston, Texas, but he's well known in his work. He indicates that the increased stress hormones that are released and activated over longer periods of time can lead to a long-lasting emotionally, social, and physical impacts in your life. So there are different mental, emotional, physical, and behavioral symptoms of this, you know, that can include general depression, unhappiness, moodiness, anger. Maybe you feel lonely or isolated. You might become sick with feeling pains or aches, nausea, dizzy, chest pains, rapid heartbeats, and such. And then behaviorally, you know, maybe people are overeating or not eating. Maybe they're not sleeping or sleeping too much. Using drugs and alcohol to relax, withdrawing from others, isolating themselves, and then just getting into other bad habits that are harmful for our well-being. And if you notice these things in children and youth, you have to inquire, and you're going to have to ask them, how are you feeling? What's going on? Is there something I can help you with? Because a lot of our youth tend to hold things in, and they tend to speak more to their friends about what's bothering them. So we have to make that time to sit with them and to sit and listen. Just listen to what they have to say. Don't pass any judgment if they explaining situations or friendship crisis or boyfriend problems, girlfriend problems, and such like that. Just to be loving and kind, and listen in a mindful manner. And do that with your friends and your family members as well if you notice those changes within them. And I just wanted to add that with this prolonged stress that's happening within people, if it is happening, we got to be mindful that this is going to create lasting damaging effects on our body and our brain. According to Vincent Filletti and Robert Anda, they did a adverse childhood experience study, and they found that when people have experienced adverse childhood experiences as a little one and as a youth, if they experience 4 or more traumatizing events in their lives, they are more susceptible to greater health conditions as they grow up, which heart attacks, strokes, cancer, autoimmune deficiencies, and things like that. So if that even further interests you and makes you want to inquire more, there's a lot of good information on the internet. There's a lot of good information on YouTube. They have nice videos that are set up that sum up this study nicely. So, in this times of COVID, we have to manage our stress. We have to manage our well-being in a good way. So allowing yourself to say no, to create those boundaries for yourself, for other people. Focus on yourself, focus on your well-being. And if you're watching too much news about COVID-19, just limit your information on the news, because that's going to impact what's on our mind all the time too. We don't want to always be thinking about COVID, but we always want to be mindful of what we're taking in and what we're seeing and what we're doing, so that we're not stressing ourselves too much. We have to alter the situation by expressing our feelings instead of bottling them up. As student support facilitators, we always encourage our children that we work with, our youth that we work with, to speak about their feelings, to draw about them, to write about them, and just to talk and share. Let's do that for each other. For all our family members and in our community where we can. We got to be resilient by adapting to the stress. So looking at it from a different perspective. And I've heard people share that, even though we're stuck at home, this is a good time to spend time with our families, to reconnect with one another, because of the world that we've lived in previously. It's so busy and chaotic, and we're busy doing this and that. So it's really a good time to focus on our families, focus on ourselves, and do the best we can for everyone around us. The fourth one was accepting the things we cannot change. Don't try to control everything. Appreciate what we have. Practice forgiveness. And share, talk. So how is MFNERC supporting our schools? We have the academic support solutions from nursery to grade 12. So staff are creating the essential learning packages that support remote learning, that support teachers, to make sure that learning is happening in all curriculum areas. We have the remote learning hub on our website, which there are additional resources available for teachers, students, and parents. There's ongoing online training and professional development. We have the Wapusqua Virtual Collegiate that's supporting students to attain high school credits or prerequisites to university. And then we have our clinical services for students, and those are the different disciplines listed there: OT, PT, student support, school psychology, SLPs, the URIS nurses, educational audiologists, and the deaf and hard of hearing. So I shared a number there if you are curious as to what else is available or what kind of supports that we can have for a First Nation school. You can always call, check out our website, and we'll do the best we can to support everyone. So some feedback from student support. We have been trying our best to connect with our students on our caseloads, and so like Evan had said, there's 9 of us who support our First Nation schools across Manitoba, and so this is some feedback. So one young lady was teared up when she was asked how she was doing. And she said, nobody ever asks me how I think or feel about it. You know, so that opened a lot. It opened and it probably validated what she was feeling, right? Like, finally, somebody's going to listen to me. Finally, I can share what I need to share. You know, like, it just, when you ask kids that, how are you? And they feel safe and comfortable, you can just feel that heaviness or that worry kind of leave their body. You know, that's a good first step. Some kids are frustrated not knowing what will happen, when this is going to end. They're tired of being stuck at home. Some are so happy to be back in school. I know my nephew was, when schools opened up again, he was so excited to go back and see his friends. Some parents noted, you know, there's a lot of stress happening for kids and at home. Some kids are depressed, silent, isolating themselves. And, you know, they're just tired, they're scared, they're worried, you know, and that's when we have to make time to talk to our children, acknowledge their feelings and validate them, remind them it's okay to feel what they're feeling, that everybody's feeling this way. And that's why it's important to keep our routines intact, keep the schedules, keep your rules enforced. You know, the kids are playing games all night, staying up all night playing video games. And what kind of video games are they playing? Is that influencing behavior? Are they sleeping? Are they getting enough nutrition? You know, we got to keep those things in check with our kids. Another support system during this coronavirus is Jordan's Principle. So this is off their website, the Indigenous Services Canada website, and what they're fast tracking supports for people who need it, for children and youth who need it. So you just can go there for further information. You can also talk to your local Jordan's Principle coordinator or your regional office, Indigenous Service Canada office, and inquire further if you feel that your child needs extra supports in terms of health, education, or social needs. So resiliency, we need to keep resilient. We need to demonstrate resiliency. We need to teach resiliency to our kids. You know, we need to be flexible. Being flexible, adapting to the change. Determination, you know, determination will allow us to keep us grounded in our morals and our values. so that we can continue passing that on with our children, so that we are striving to live our good life. Drawing on our inner strength, using our culture, our ceremonies, our traditions to help us be in a good space. And, practicing our self-control and our calmness with ourselves, so that we also can display that to our children and they can feel that within, because what we have or what we're demonstrating is they're watching. There's always little eyes watching, and we're modeling that behavior, and we want to be the best version of ourselves so they too can be the best version for themselves. And Dr. Bruce Perry, he says, empathy is the essential to the survival of humankind. So we need to understand ourselves in a kind way so that we can also understand others and show that kindness and love as well. So again, just 4 key things you can remember, and that building that resiliency in our children is relationships. We need relationships are going to always be the foundation of showing that love and that kindness to our young people, to our friends, our family, our colleagues. So build those strong relationships. Allow them to be emotionally aware, to have that literacy within themselves, talking about feelings, recognizing and such. And that'll build that competence with them, and always have a positive attitude. Be strong, be positive, so that they too can be strong and positive. And so I'm just going to quickly finish. I have a few more slides. So you can do this as a family, you can do this as a classroom, you can do this for yourself, but there's many different things in this coping skills toolbox you can do. So one is using the 5 senses to comfort yourself, to ground yourself. The other one is distraction. So you're doing different activities to keep your mind off anything that might be stressing you out, and it's good to do that and come back and address the problem, solve it however you may. If you're feeling down and out, opposite action. So you want to do positive affirmations, inspiring activities, or watching something funny. Emotional awareness, I touched upon that. Recognize your emotions, journaling, writing, drawing, etc. And mindfulness is such a big trend right now. It's something everywhere, and everyone is trying it and practicing it. So I encourage you do that. And then if kids are really needing additional support, create that crisis plan so that they know who they can reach out to if mom or dad is ever away, or if they don't have an adult to help them at that moment. So this is a self-care medicine wheel, COVID-19 area. So just be mindful of the 4 aspects of your well-being, your spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. We're always told to be in balance, to focus on any area that might be weak in your life. So do extra activities in that area. So as long as we're practicing that and honoring ourselves and honoring our spirit, we'll feel more balanced, and we'll feel better of who we are. For educators, just be mindful of what you can take on. I know teachers like to do everything and want to do everything for their children, their students, and their colleagues. So just, set your boundaries. Make sure you're doing fun things. Make sure you're leaving work at school for the night or the weekend. It is a stressful time, so just make sure you're doing what you need to do to keep balanced, to keep happy, and to keep stress-free. And to end, I just want to share these 2 quotes. David Cashane reminds us to walk on Mother Earth. Tell her how you feel lost, discouraged because of the uncertainty of what man has done. And another one I like is use the power of love and laughter to lift us out of this darkness. our previous presenter, she talked about, that positive imagery and using that as a tool to calm and relax. So this is what the picture I was imagining when she asked us to do that exercise. This is from back home, and just do that, and do that with your family. Use your 5 senses, and it's just so fun. I love doing that with kids because they just say, "Oh, I went to the candy shop. I was eating a big giant lollipop," and it's so awesome. So try that with the little ones. See what you hear. And then some resources for kids and families. I did share additional resources with Hannah, so she has those and she can email them out. And Egasane, Masicho, Watse, thank you for listening and participating today.
Thank you very much, Brandy, for this really thorough presentation. This is something that we all needed to hear. It was very informative, very detailed, and I'm just like moved. I mean, with all 3 presentations, actually, they're all very important. My question to you, actually, before I open the floor to the audience, I'm greedy. I'll ask myself first. Can you give us an example of how you have connected the students with elders or the community members with elders who reached out to you, for mental health issues in this time? Or was there any program that you have offered to them to like virtually or in somehow connecting with the elders to the troubled people?
So during this time, we most communities, have gone into their lockdown, or some have opened. So it's definitely community based. So either we connect through telephone, or we can connect online virtually. And then elders, that's been difficult. I've only been able to talk to a couple of elders on the phone. So, just getting their feedback or whatever is needed is how I've been going about that, and the rest of the team too. So a couple of us have traveled to communities where it has been open, but most of us have been grounded at home and doing online and virtual.
And I also wanted to add that, the quotes that you brought into your presentation from all the elders, they are so important, and I love them. Thank you very much. So I'll open the questions for audience. And if anybody has any question for Brandy, please, you're welcome to ask, and or you can write it in the chat box. If not, then I will give the mic to Evan.
Thank everybody, the presenters, Sherron, Kjelti, Brandy, our guest, Leon McGilvery, as well as the COVID-19 Indigenous team for putting this together. I know there's a lot of meetings and behind the scenes work. I'm very grateful to have everybody join us today. If you have any questions, feel free to join us on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/COVID19indigenous.ca. We also have our website, www.covid19indigenous.ca. We also, all the information and our contact info, we're on social media, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. So with that, thank you guys, and I will hope to hear from you guys again soon. Take care.